Compliance is a profession where people work tirelessly to make the world a better place. And there are hundreds of amazing and inspiring women who have helped the field develop into what it is today. Great Women in Compliance is part of the Compliance Podcast Network, so join Mary, Shirley, and Lisa Fine as they talk with women in compliance who are making a difference.
Hi, you're listening to Great Women in Compliance on the Compliance Podcast Network with Mary, Shirley, and Lisa Fine. This is a first for me, an ethics and compliance leader who is also a sommelier. Today, we're speaking with Renata Moreti, the head of controls, compliance, and ethics for Diageo. She works in Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile, and is based in Chile. Like many of us, Renata started as in-house counsel and worked most of her career in South America, but she also worked in Madrid. When she moved to Chile, she started taking sommelier classes and is now certified as a professional sommelier. One of the most interesting parts of this story is how her sommelier training also applies to ethics, compliance, and internal controls, not just by drinking wine as the end to her day. This is also great because we're going to get a little bit of extra, free tips for the holidays too. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for the opportunity.
So can you talk to a little bit about your background and how you started in ethics and compliance and now have a role that also includes internal controls?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I used to be an in-house lawyer. I was focused in contracts and customers' rights. And then one day I got a call from the headquarters in US, from the company I used to work at that time, requesting me to roll out an anti-corruption program in Brazil. And I've never, ever heard about it before. I started to look into that, studying that. And well, I'm Brazilian and I lived most of my life in Brazil until that time. And it was, whoa, that really rings a bell. And then I started to fall in love into that and really feeling that compliance had a meaning more than what I was doing before. And then I had an invitation to join another company called GWIC, this time to have 100% compliance function. And then I definitely fell in love with that. I had the opportunity to meet great women in that company. I guess you talked to some of them. I guess you talked to Lisa Valentini, to Christy Grant Hart. So I had a good school. And then I moved to Chile and to Diageo with something that was more than other than the compliance that we used to know, policies, training, and internal investigations. I have this internal controls role too. So it's like putting everything together and seeing from end to end the whole compliance chain. And of course, Diageo is a leader in the alcohol industry. So it was a good match for my two Ms, compliance and sommelier.
Well, that is actually, I find this part of it so fascinating. Both, how did you decide to become certified as a sommelier, and how does that align a little bit with your compliance work and background? I think it's so fascinating.
When I moved to Chile about 3 years ago, I thought it was a good opportunity to learn some more about wine. Chile is a huge wine producer. And then I decided to take a course, a small course, like a basic course. My main goal was to go to the supermarket, look into hundreds of bottles, and know what I was buying. As basic as that. And then I decided to take this course, who was not a one-day course. It was a 3-month wine course, and a sommelier course, in fact. And then I discovered a whole new world. Imagine open doors of sensations, flavors. Once again, just like in compliance, I fell in love. And 3 years later, I'm a professional sommelier. I don't know how it happened, but I'm here.
One of the things, though, that you also talked about your work as sommelier is you find that some of the work that you're doing, it relates back to compliance and training. And I just think it's just a fascinating link outside the idea that some people jokingly will say in a boring training, you should get a glass of wine or something like that. So talk a little bit about what you learned in that course and how you've applied it to general compliance training.
People think about a sommelier, being a sommelier, people think it is all about wine. And it's true, but it's also just as part of it. When you are a sommelier, you go through a lot of different things. So we study wine, we study spirit, we study chocolate, habanos, coffee, tea, food. So it's a wide range of things. But most of all these things, being a sommelier is being a server. Sommelier is being about serving people, amazing people. It's like the main idea is when you have one night out, having dinner with your family, and you order a glass of wine or a cocktail, the main work of a sommelier is amaze you, make you feel really happy at that very moment. And when I look back to compliance sometimes is like wine for most of us, like I was when I came to Chile. People have no clue about compliance. Why do you need to do this? Why do I have to do this training? Same as looking into a wine list. What should I order? I don't know anything about it. I have no clue what this wine is. How does it taste? Now, after getting into this world of the sommelier, what I want to do into my compliance role is amaze people. Is when I talk about compliance, I want them to make comfortable and feel secure in my instructions. I want them to be amazed in the training. I want the training to be fun. I want them to remember that moment, that policy, that tip for a while, just like a very good glass of wine that you have. So it may sound a little strange, but I feel I'm a much better compliance professional now that I am a sommelier, because I really want to amaze people with compliance. And compliance is great. So we can do that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm smiling as you're speaking because I'm thinking about, well, everybody should not be taking away. You should have an amazing glass of wine, but there are also the learnings. You should get the certification and the sommelier to fully understand sort of the extent of the alignment. And I think that it's fantastic. What I think is also really interesting too is how you have taking your passion for ethics and compliance into the world of sommeliers. I know that you incorporated that in your work with the International Association.
I think that's a great project. I'm super proud of it. So we have this association called the International Association of Sommeliers. During the sommelier course, we need to make a final paper for it. And my final paper was about ethics in sommelier. Somehow it came to the attention of International Association, and now we're putting together a compliance program for the International Association of Sommeliers. Alcohol industry can be very tricky, and big companies already, like Diageo, already have compliance programs in place. But when it comes to sommelier, we don't have companies that offer sommelier jobs, offer sommelier services to people, but most of us work by ourselves, and we don't have this structure of compliance. So the idea is to put together this compliance structure for the International Association, and then based on that, to have the national associations with their own compliance structures too, and then finally come to the independent sommeliers. So it's a very long road, but I'm extremely happy to see that not only big companies, not only the regular corporate business are interested in compliance, but we can also spread amazing culture, this great lessons of compliance to the sommeliers, to the wine industry, to the across the alcohol industry in all it fields. So let's see how we move on. It's a great work, and I'm extremely happy that the International Association bought it.
I think it's fantastic. I mean, I think it's so much fun when a person is able to take something they're really excited about and then also apply what you do professionally. I mean, it's really quite fun.
Yeah, you're right. I'm completely in love with both. So it's easier. Makes everything easier.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of and it also, like you said, it brings a lot to what you're doing, as mentioned before. But can you talk a little bit about your compliance culture now at Diageo, and how you, as you've been putting it, is helping people do the right thing, and how have you grown that culture?
We have headquarters in the UK, so we are a multinational company, very, very structured on compliance and internal controls. So, of course, make things easier. But we are an alcohol company. So when it comes to compliance, besides everything that we do regularly, anti-corruption, antitrust, data privacy, and all these highlights, we have a huge concern about drinking in the right way, about things that are a lot into the alcohol industry, like harassment, like women empowerment, fighting against sexual harassment. Drinking and driving is a no for us. So, and this is into the culture. So here, when we talk about compliance, we of course talk about all the regular things that I said, but it is so into our culture because of this other extremely important part about responsible drinking and how to treat each other's, how alcohol influences our behaviors, that it's an everyday thinking about doing the right thing, doing every day. We have our ambition is to be the most respected and trusted company in the world. So in our really everyday life, we have this thinking. So makes a lot easier. We have a huge tone from the top in everything. But I guess being in the alcohol industry and having this accountability over people's lives makes it easier to go through the other paths of compliance, like anti-corruption, data privacy, like doing the right thing for us. The first thing that we think about is doing the right thing when consuming alcohol, and then we move all this and strong responsibility that we have into the other areas of compliance. So it's to be very honest, it's a very nice company to be in because we basically talk about compliance every day in everything that we do. We need to be very, very aware of our responsibility outside the offices.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, when you think about it, because you have all of the safety and security concerns and other things related to that. Also, one part of it also, a lot of our listeners are based in the U.S. and the UK. Could you talk a little bit about South America in particular, both culturally and what you do within your work, and also the things that you often think to yourself, you wish that the people in the U.S. or UK might would know or understand about your region a little bit more.
Oh, yeah, South America, this bubbling continent. Yeah, we have a lot of things everything happens all the time in South America. So we have this huge movement in Brazil against corruption. We now have a lot of social movements all over South America, including Chile. don't know if you got the news in the US, but we are under a lot of social and political discussions also in Chile, who used to be one of the most calm countries in South America. So I guess, to be honest, I guess we have, since a few years ago, we've been experimenting a huge moment in South America for change. And I guess part of that, to be very honest, is because of the movement that big companies with headquarters in US, UK, Europe, as you mentioned, made in South America. Back there, when I look and I remember my boss from US calling me to say, you need to implement the anti-corruption program in Brazil. It was like, what are you talking about? And now we look around and pretty much every company has a compliance program in place. So I guess part of this good moment of South America was because of that too, because of the private sector moving into this wave. But I guess, well, South America is, as I mentioned, a bubbling place. And one thing that I would say, because I don't think this will be over, I don't think we can go back in this movement. One tip that I would say is have someone who understands the culture, because it's a cliche. Yes, pretty much everyone says that, but it's true. Other places of the world, there are differences, huge cultural differences, and they need to be noted. They need to be taken into account. So having someone who understands the culture, who speaks the language, makes a huge difference, and trust. I guess we in South America, based in South America, need to trust our headquarters, because you have a lot of experience on that. Pretty much everything from compliance comes from US, for instance. And the other thing is true, when someone in South America, when you people in South America say, maybe we need to do this differently, maybe we need to communicate this in a different way, trust them, because probably they quite understand that the message will not be delivered the way you want it to. So this trust relation is crucial for having a successful compliance program when you are based in a place and needs to spread it around different countries, especially in South America.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were speaking about, South America in itself is very diverse. The countries are different. In Brazil, the first language is Brazilian Portuguese, which I remember very clearly every time in my prior role. I finally had to tell the guy, there were two guys in Brazil who were fantastic compliance people, that I knew that I would make sure that we had Latam Spanish and Brazilian Portuguese, not the European versions, but they think that, it's also a diverse area as well, which I'm sure, you have that challenge in your work too. But you did mention some commonalities as well with, training, or the way when you trust the people, how do you find that you communicate things or do things with your teams that may be different to train or inform than some of the other parts of the world?
To South America. And probably if I ask you, tell me 3 things that come to your mind when I say South America. To you, you say sun, you say joy, you say fun, or things like that. And that's pretty much true here with you in the office. And if I open the door, you will hear a lot of noise outside, because people are pretty much screaming to each other and talking and laughing and making fun and having fun while they work. So if I bring to these people straightforward training with 10 PowerPoint slides and a lot of talking, it will not work. But if I have a game split them in teams, and have a competition, the message will be delivered. If I make them record videos or make songs about the policies, it will be successful for sure. To give you an example, I had at some point a huge time for understanding the GNE policy, like the main things, what we need to do. And we've been training that through months and months, and mistakes were still there. And then one day I was literally taking shower, and it came to my mind, I want a GNE. Put a video clip of Queen singing I Want to Break Free with subtitles. I have a GNE. What do I do with that? Of course, in Spanish. And it was about a year ago. Until today, sometimes people tell me, you know what? I have a GNE. And I was, really? So games, puzzles, activities, competitions, music, movies, it all connects to this culture of joy, of fun, of talking out loud. So I guess this is what we need to look for. What works, and of course, what works here will not work in Asia, will not work in Africa, will maybe not work in US. What works in Brazil maybe will not work in Chile. For me, this is the magic of this. Yeah. Once again, mentioning Queen, that kind of magic. And finding this and this specificities and trying to get compliance into that. In the end of the day, compliance can be fun. Compliance is a great thing to share. It's something that we all that who work in compliance, we are very proud of that. We are very proud of what we do. So I guess the key is to how we are going to share the passion in a way that people will understand it and be amazed.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I have two other things before we close off. One is if there's anything, any particular sort of advice for women or starting their careers, or one thing that you've talked about that I think is advice for all of us is if you have another passion outside of compliance, go for it, and you'll never, both will complement each other. But I don't know if you have any other specific, advice or thoughts for women, either from South America or just generally.
I guess I can talk in both compliance or sommelier. For me, besides that, be passionate about what you do. Really, really like it. It makes a lot of difference when you like what you do. Makes everything easier. But the other thing, and I mentioned it before, is connect. I've met a lot of people. It's sometimes a very male word, both corporate business and the sommelier. But I've met amazing, amazing women during my path. And most of all, they were very generous. They usually post each other, celebrated with each other. So connect. Don't be alone. Don't feel alone, even though sometimes we do feel, but connect to people. There are a lot of great women doing great jobs, be inspired by someone. Not only women, of course. I've met 100 amazing men who were open to diversity, to inclusion, to make you be part of that, to have open conversations. So connect to people. Don't be alone. Don't try to prove. Sometimes women try to prove that we can do by ourselves, but we're not alone. And there are a lot of people, great people, that really we should connect and be inspired by. But and you've been talking to a lot of them.
There are so many out there. It's just been a wonderful experience. When you talk about passion for something, the excitement of getting to know this group and this network is one of those things that really, keeps me going. And I feel super fortunate. Now, the last thing I have to ask you before we go is, first of all, this is going to be coming out before U.S. Thanksgiving and all of the winter holidays or summer holidays, depending on what part of the world you're in. But I wanted to know if, first of all, if you had some Chilean wine tips or suggestions on what to look for. And also for you to mention, I know you have an Instagram page, so that since we only will have a couple minutes, so that me and everybody else can get some more tips on these things and learn from your experience. So.
Yeah, so let me start for the easiest part of it. Yes, I do have an Instagram. It's Bom Dia Frambuesa. And I guess it's better for you to write it down.
It will absolutely be in the notes for the show, and on it'll be out there. So I'm going to be following it today. So
great. So I'll make a promise here. I will write more in English so everybody can get the tips. And because it's basically in Spanish and Portuguese, there are a lot of things in English too, but I'll be more into English so people can better understand Chilean wine most of all. And talking about Chilean wine, more than telling you a brand or a specific, I will share with you how I've learned to buy Chilean wine. And it's kind of tricky because if you don't know Chile, you don't know the regions in Chile, you probably will not be accurate on buy your Chilean wine. Because here, for me, the most easy way to buy Chilean wine is by region. So making it easy, if you are looking for a white wine like Sauvignon Blanc, like Chardonnay, look for coastal regions. And I can send you, and you can put a note you can write it down in the podcast note too. Look for Casablanca, Limari, San Antonio. If you're looking for red wine, you go for like Cabernet Sauvignon or Carmenere, the Chilean star. Look for Colchagua or Maule, Maipo. But if you want to be very Chilean, you will look for a specific grape called País, which means country in Spanish. And you go for two regions, Maule and Itata. For me, País, and there's another grape, Carignan. They're both red wines. They are Chilean rising stars. So take that note. You'll be super cool if you go into your holiday dinner and bring a Chilean Carignan and say, you know what, this is a rising star from Chile. And it's a very, it's a full body wine with a lot of floral aromas in the nose, so it's very pleasant to have and goes amazing with meat, but it has some delicacy to go with the classic turkey too. So I guess this is what you should be looking for, Chilean Carignan.
This is perfect. I'm going to have to, after we're done, also get the correct spelling of some of these things to make sure that I can go buy the right things. Because now, today I'm going to be moving out of the Sonoma region and into Chile, which may upset my college roommate who lives near Sonoma, but we can share. So
that's great. I like that. Let's make you a Chile ambassador in USA.
I'm completely happy to do that. And thank you for being a compliance and wine ambassador for us. And thank you so much for your time today and for joining us on the podcast. And for Mary, Shirley, and Lisa Fine, thank you for joining us on the Compliance Podcast Network. And thanks again, Renata.
Thank you. And keep on the good job. Keep connecting people. It's amazing.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Great Women in Compliance. We hope you'll join us in honoring the great women in the compliance field by subscribing to this podcast and leaving a review.